be discussing one of the simulation toolkit available for students, for researchers, for scientists, so they can perform different kind of experiments without spending any money, and that is CloudSim. Now, if you are a student or you are doing some kind of practical work with a cloud, you will know कि अगर आप इसको रियल एनवायरनमेंट में करते हैं, जैसे कि हमारे पास फॉर एग्जांपल AWS है या हमारे पास Microsoft Azure है or any other provider of the cloud, so it becomes very expensive with the number of resources, and also the flexibility is not that high, and it's quite hard to reproduce your result. So there can be many reasons. For instance, varying demand of the okay, supervisor कहते हैं कि yes, you have done this experiment with one set of configuration and let's do it with an other set of configuration. So requirement change हो जाती हैं. Those requirement can be your quality of service requirement, and there can be the control over the low level, for example, hardware devices and their configuration. Or for scientists, for researchers, the most important thing is to reproduce the result, and that's very important. अगर आप अपने experiments को authenticate करना चाहते हैं, if you want to benchmark your result. So for all these purposes, if you do experimentation in a real cloud environment, it will become very, very expensive. So we need a solution, and that solution is a simulation environment simulation toolkit. Now it's not something new. आप लोग इसको already इस्तेमाल कर चुके हैं network simulator में, NS2 के नाम से. We simulate our network in that. या imagine ले लें, real life से कोई example ले लेते हैं. Yes, so for instance, you want to be a pilot and you want to learn how to be a pilot. So ये तो नहीं होगा कि वो आपको जो सा है रियल प्लेन में बिठा के आपके टेस्टिंग करवाएंगे कि कैसे उसको मतलब फ्लाई करना है. ऑफ कोर्स देयर इज अ सिमुलेशन एनवायरनमेंट. वंस यू गो थ्रू दैट सिमुलेशन एनवायरनमेंट, देन यू विल मूव ऑन टू द रियल plane actually. So we do the same here, and the CloudSim is the alternative for the Amazon EC2. So there are many alternatives available हमारे पास, लेकिन मेरे जो एक्सपीरियंस है CloudSim के साथ उसमें मैंने इसमें एक एडवांटेज नोट किया है कि इट्स प्रोवाइड्स यू द मोस्ट रिच सेट ऑफ फीचर्स, नंबर वन, and number two, it's very easy to configure, very easy to use. और इसके अलावा जो सा है मतलब फॉर इंस्टेंस ओपन सोर्स, सो इट्स एक्सटेंसिबल. यू कैन हैव योर ओन मॉड्यूल्स इम्प्लीमेंटेशन अगर आप इसको करना चाहते हैं. इट सपोर्ट्स द इवन बेस्ड सिमुलेशन. आप इसमें जो डेटा सेंटर्स विच वाज आवर टॉपिक इन प्रीवियस वीडियो और सम अदर कंसेप्ट विच वी विल कवर इन टुडे लेक्चर, वी कैन मॉडल such things like data center in CloudSim, and we can have different allocation policies. We will cover them shortly in this video. And if you want to connect different components, so for instance अगर जैसे कि physical machines हैं या virtual machines हैं, you want to have a network environment between them, so you can do that as well in a CloudSim. But the most important property of the CloudSim is the support for the federated cloud, right? So you can have a multiple cloud provider in one simulation. This is something very important. इसके अलावा वो एक जो एडवांटेज है वो API का सपोर्ट का है. सो द CloudSim structures and APIs is almost the same as like Amazon EC2. So if you get familiar with this, it's very easy for us to transform them into a real cloud environment as well. Now with that, let's talk about the architecture of the CloudSim, and there are two kind of components. One are the core components and one are the supporting components. So we will start with the core components, and these are 4 core components in a CloudSim. So we start with a data center, and then a data center बिल्कुल वही चीज़ है जो कि हमने previous lecture में cover किया है. We can model that real data center here in a cloud as well. Data center contains physical machine. Those physical machines are simply called host here in this particular framework, and once we have these physical machine or host, we can run virtual machine on top of them. They are same called virtual machine as well here in a CloudSim environment. And the last core component is the Cloudlet. Now that's something new. That is actually your job, your task. It's a logical entity जो कि आप लोग execute करना चाहते हैं. So it can be some kind of an experiment or so on. So if we take this hierarchy and we go from bottom upwards, then it becomes very easy that Cloudlets, that's your task, they run on a different virtual machines, and the virtual machines in return are runs on host, and the host in basically lives in a data center environment. So let's discuss these 4 components just in a little detail, and we will start with the data center. So just imagine you want to model a data center. तो किसी भी data center को model करने के लिए उसकी कुछ properties होनी चाहिए, कुछ characteristics होनी चाहिए, and those characteristics are mentioned here. So for example, you can mention कि data center का architecture क्या होगा, x86 or any other architecture, what kind of operating system is there, what kind of virtualization support is there, या कौन से time zone की हम बात कर रहे हैं. So data center can have these properties along with some other properties. For instance, if we want to talk about the cost of the data center, so we say the million instruction per second or the memory storage bandwidth, all those properties can be set when we create a data center. And a data center will hold what? It will hold different hosts, and host, they have their own properties. So when we talk about the host, these are the physical machines, and we say that a host can have a property like उसके cores कितने होंगे, processors कितने होंगे, उन cores की speed क्या होगी, so million instruction per second, or we talk about the RAM, bandwidth, storage, and other scheduler types. We will discuss them shortly, but these are the properties. When we model a host, we need to set those properties. जब हम होस्ट की बात करते हैं तो होस्ट क्या करता है कि बेसिकली VMs are deployed on top of the host. So we will talk about the VMs as well. But right now, think about these two components in a way that data center is like your big building. And the host, they are these mounted racks or those servers, चाहे वो हमारे पास blade server हो या कोई और server हो, doesn't matter, and they reside in this building. So this architecture, we say that there is a data center and host. These are the two key components. Now the other two components are virtual machine and cloudlets. Now when we talk about a virtual machine, once again we need to set some properties, same number of properties, how many processors are there, the size, the virtual machine, and then there is scheduler. We will discuss it. And when we talk about a cloud, now the cloud is something new for you maybe as a student. Cloud is actually a logical entity. It's a हम कहते हैं कि task है, what actually you want to do in your cloud environment. So for the sake of simplicity, ऐसे करें, सोचें ये आपका workload है, right? So when we define a workload in a cloud, we will define the length, million instruction. So if the number is high, that means these are bigger tasks, they will take more time to execute. And if the million instruction number is low, that means इनकी length कम है, so they will take less amount of time for execution. Similarly, how many processor it will require to execute the task. अगर input output है आपके पास ऐसा task है जो कि input output generate करता है, we can set those parameter as well. And since task will require some kind of processor, some kind of RAM and bandwidth as well, so we need to define कि in task की जो utilization model होगा वो कौन सा होगा. We will discuss it shortly. But now, right now, think about it. Cloudlet, that's your job. For example, processing an image or running a query or training a model, right? So we can have different type of tasks in the CloudSim environment. So before we go to the supporting component, मैं आपको एक छोटी सी example diagrammatical presentation दिखाना चाहता हूँ यहाँ पर. And if you can see the diagrammatical presentation here, it's the same hierarchy which we just discussed, that we have our data center, and the data center contains these hosts. So we can have one or more hosts available in a data center. Now the data center किस चीज़ को host करता है? Basically virtual machines को. Virtual machines are allocated to a particular host. And what are virtual machines for? Basically जितने भी हमारे पास cloudlets हैं, हम उनको कहाँ पर execute करते हैं या run करते हैं या map करते हैं? We map them into a virtual machine. So some cloudlets are mapped to one and some are mapped to an other particular set of virtual machines. So that's actually the hierarchy of the core components. And now we will move on to the supporting components of the CloudSim. So जब हम supporting component